Beyond the storm-driven Scotia Sea, the South Sandwich Trench opens like a dark seam beside a volcanic island arc. Its deepest water lies near Antarctica, where cold currents, moving plates, and isolation converge in one formidable boundary. The mystery begins with geography. Because this trench occupies neither the familiar abyss nor the frozen continental shelf. It curves east of the South Sandwich Islands, marking a place where one oceanic plate descends beneath another. Above it, waves race through the Southern Ocean, while the seafloor falls several kilometers into permanent night. If you followed that slope downward, sunlight would vanish long before the trench revealed its narrow floor. Temperature approaches the cold stability of deep polar water, while pressure rises relentlessly with every descending meter. The opening image is therefore a collision between motion and stillness, fierce weather overhead and ancient darkness below. Early charts could outline the depression, but sparse soundings left its inner terrain blurred by distance and weather. Modern bathymetric surveys show a continuous hadal valley, shaped by subduction rather than an isolated bottomless hole. Its reported maximum depth exceeds 8 kilometers, although exact values depend on survey coverage and instrument correction. That depth places the trench among Earth's hadal environments, named for the ocean realm below roughly 6 kilometers. Yet depth alone does not explain why this Antarctic margin matters to geology, circulation, and the limits of life. The investigation must descend along the structure, testing what is measured against what remains hidden between survey tracks. At the edge of Antarctica, the trench becomes a natural archive written by earthquakes, sediments, currents, and organisms. The South American plate extends beneath the region and bends downward at the South Sandwich subduction zone. To its west, the smaller Sandwich plate supports the volcanic arc carrying the remote South Sandwich Islands. Subduction generates earthquakes as rock interfaces lock, deform, and slip beneath kilometers of seawater and crust. It also feeds volcanism, because water released from the descending slab helps surrounding mantle rock begin melting. Magma rises through the overriding plate, building islands that contrast sharply with the trench running beside them. This paired trench and arc geometry is directly mapped and fits mainstream plate tectonic interpretation across convergent boundaries. The trench floor receives sediment from settling particles, slope failures, volcanic material, and biological remains from above. Near polar waters, seasonal productivity can send pulses of organic matter toward depths otherwise starved of fresh food. Much is consumed during descent, but surviving fragments may collect where steep walls funnel material into the axis. Such delivery is uneven, creating patches of nourishment separated by broad stretches of energy-poor mud. At hadal pressure, cells and animals require biochemical adaptations that keep membranes and proteins functioning. Researchers have documented amphipods and other invertebrates in deep trenches, though distributions differ among isolated systems. No observation justifies treating every trench as biologically identical, especially one separated by Southern Ocean barriers. Cold water itself is not the sole challenge. because many deep species tolerate low temperatures across wider regions. Pressure, limited food, steep terrain, and geographic isolation combine into a distinctive ecological filter. Sampling from this trench remains difficult because ships face heavy seas, icing risks, long travel, and narrow weather windows. Deep landers can carry cameras, baited traps, and sensors downward without requiring a piloted vehicle at full depth. Multibeam sonar maps broad relief by timing reflected sound, while direct imagery confirms only the small areas actually viewed. Recovered sediment cores preserve layered particles, but each core represents one point within a complex landscape. Together, these methods establish context without pretending that scattered observations reveal the entire hadal ecosystem. The trench also intersects Antarctic bottom water pathways, although local circulation at extreme depth remains incompletely resolved. Dense waters formed around Antarctica spread through the global ocean, carrying cold, oxygenated water into many basins. Weather and how those flows ventilate every pocket of this trench requires measurements close to the bottom. The sharper question is what the trench records when a restless polar ocean meets a restless tectonic margin. Bathymetry reveals scarps, basins, and steep walls capable of steering currents and concentrating falling particles. Earthquake records confirm active deformation, but they cannot show each slow movement or every sediment disturbance. Fresh slope failures may erase older layers, while quieter basins can preserve sequences of volcanic ash and organic debris. Those layers potentially record eruptions, changing productivity, and abrupt transport events, yet dating and correlation remain demanding. A core with coarse material may indicate a landslide, but current transport or local topography must also be considered. Chemical profiles through pore water can reveal microbial reactions consuming organic matter beneath the sediment surface. Such measurements support active carbon cycling, not a claim that the trench is unusually rich everywhere. Baited cameras, scavengers may arrive quickly because odor travels along currents across a food-limited floor. Arrival demonstrates sensory ability and mobility, while bait abundance creates conditions unlike ordinary background feeding. An amphipod detecting dissolved cues can swim toward carrion, feed rapidly, and store energy before scarcity returns. That cue action sequence is documented in hadal scavengers, but species-level claims require specimens, not distant silhouettes. Some trench animals accumulate pressure-protective molecules that stabilize proteins, an adaptation constrained by depth and physiology. These mechanisms help explain survival, yet they do not remove energetic limits imposed by sparse organic supply. If you watch a lander image, the illuminated patch is real, but darkness beyond its lamps remains unsampled. Apparent emptiness may reflect limited camera area, animal avoidance, weak attraction, or genuine low abundance. Likewise, a crowded bait station cannot be scaled automatically into a population estimate for the entire trench. Repeated deployments across depths and seasons are needed to separate local behavior from regional ecological pattern. Isolation could promote distinct lineages because deep basins and ridges restrict movement among suitable hadal habitats. That idea follows evolutionary theory and observations elsewhere. But genetic evidence from this trench remains limited. Connectivity may still occur along deep corridors or through dispersing life stages carried by currents. Researchers must therefore test both endemism and exchange, rather than assume the trench is a sealed biological island. Plastic fibers and fragments have reached many remote, deep environments, making contamination here plausible and concerning. Only carefully identified samples can establish amounts, polymer types, and pathways within the South Sandwich system. A single fragment proves presence at one place and time, not the rate of accumulation across the whole trench. This boundary rewards caution because remoteness magnifies both scientific importance and uncertainty. The trench influences life above by participating in processes that recycle carbon, nutrients, and geological material. Organic particles descending from surface blooms link polar sunlight to animals living far below its reach. Microbes transform buried compounds, while burrowing invertebrates alter sediment structure and chemical exchange at the interface. Scavengers locate episodic carcasses, consume concentrated food, and redistribute material through movement and waste. Predators may follow prey cues, converting brief food pulses into longer pathways through the benthic community. These sequences make the trench an active ecosystem, not merely an empty crack beside Antarctica. Its tectonic activity also creates hazards, although remoteness limits direct exposure of densely populated coasts. Earthquakes and submarine slope failures remain relevant to regional seafloor stability and scientific infrastructure. Volcanic islands nearby support distinctive wildlife, connecting seabird and marine mammal foraging grounds with surrounding ocean productivity. Not every surface animal interacts with the trench, but shared currents couple distant habitats through water and particles. The Southern Ocean helps regulate climate by absorbing heat and carbon, making its deep circulation globally consequential. How much the trench stores or transforms is uncertain, and its small area argues against exaggerated global claims. Still, extreme basins can reveal how carbon processing changes under high pressure and persistent cold. They also test engineering systems intended for icy seas, deep pressure, and autonomous operation far from support. Every successful deployment improves the possibility of observing other polar hadal regions with less disturbance. For you, the trench may appear remote, yet the water above it belongs to a connected planetary circulation. Its sediments also receive traces of human activity transported beyond ordinary sight and immediate responsibility. Understanding that connection requires measured fluxes, not dramatic assumptions about an untouched or ruined abyss. The human stake is knowledge of a frontier changing under warming seas, shifting ice, fishing, and pollution. Future evidence must begin with denser bathymetric coverage, capable of resolving unsurveyed slopes and the deepest axis. Long-term instruments near the bottom could measure current direction, temperature, oxygen, turbidity, and particle delivery through seasons. Repeated sediment cores could distinguish steady deposition from earthquakes, eruptions, and sudden slope failures. Environmental DNA may reveal biological presence, but sequences require contamination controls and cannot alone prove abundance or behavior. Specimens collected across depth bands would permit verified taxonomy, genetics, physiology, and comparisons with neighboring basins. Time-lapse cameras could show natural movement without relying entirely on the powerful attraction of bait. Coordinated surface measurements would connect plankton blooms and sinking particles to later events on the trench floor. Seismic monitoring could relate sediment disturbances to earthquakes, separating tectonic triggers from current-driven transport. These observations would test whether the trench behaves as a persistent trap, a ventilated corridor, or alternating states. They could also reveal how isolated its populations truly are across the Scotia Sea and Southern Ocean. No expedition can illuminate the entire valley, so uncertainty should be mapped as carefully as depth. The most valuable result may be a boundary between what instruments repeatedly confirm and what remains plausible. Autonomous vehicles could revisit steep scarps that ships cannot safely follow with closely spaced survey lines. Any newly observed organism would require specimens or diagnostic imagery before receiving a confident taxonomic identity. When you return in imagination to the stormy surface, the unseen floor still follows the curving island arc. Below those waves, plates descend, sediments shift, and cold-adapted organisms exploit brief arrivals of energy. The South Sandwich Trench is not Antarctica's final secret, but a measurable frontier where polar ocean and moving Earth meet.